Hello and welcome to another edition of Entheoradio, where we talk about shamanism, psychedelics, and altered states for healing. This is our conscious entheogenic media production, and we are super excited to have another special guest here today with us, who is an amazing guide and a speaker for plant and fungal consciousness. This is your host, your captain speaking, Captain Hugh T Alkemi. I'm also known as Travar Hughes. I'm in broadcasting from sunny San Diego, and our special guest is coming in from Wales. David, welcome to the show.
Hey man, nice to be on your show. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to read your bio, David. So for our audience, David comes from a strong Celtic background with an ancestry from both Cornwall and Ireland. This connection forms an essential part of his healing practices. After a powerful wake-up in Egypt in 2010, he spent 3 years studying Tibetan Buddhism in both India and Tuscany. He has taken teachings, transmissions, and empowerments from Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Dagri Rinpoche, Chamtrul Rinpoche, and Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. Some of those are hard names for me. After living overseas for 15 years, a powerful experience with a plant teacher medicine called him back to his homeland, and so began a journey deep into the world of plants. David has spent 5 years studying under an herbalist and plant spirit healer, Pam Montgomery, and is now a certified plant spirit healer. And he has completed a 2-year apprenticeship in Ireland with medical herbalist Carol. How do you say your last name? Carol what?
Carol Guyot.
Guyot, okay. In addition, 4 years were spent studying and practicing with the U Mysteries with U Shaman Michael Dunning, geomancy with Dr. Patrick McManaway, and druidry at the bardic level with OBOD, plus Celtic shamanic healing with David Leslie. You've got such an extensive background. It kind of goes on, and I'm super excited about this next little line in your bio. In 2017, he joined Quechua elder, how do you say this person's name? Kurikindi?
Kurikindi.
Kurikindi. David joined Quechua elder Kurikindi for a 5-month training period in Ecuador, during which time he learned Amazonian shamanism and how to work with 3 core plants in the Quechua tradition: tobacco, guayusa, and ayahuasca. Oh my goodness, you have such a fun background and such an extensive world traveling history there. Where do we start? Like, did you always have a proclivity growing up over there in, what is it, Ireland and Cornwall as well, where the Wales Isles?
Well, I've been blessed in my life to live in many different places and travel a lot. And, I kind of think all travel helps open us up to different ideas and different kinds of experiences. And we lived overseas for many years in the Middle East, spent 9 years living in Dubai, doing the corporate thing. My background actually really is in corporate business to business exhibitions and conferences. I worked in the transportation sector in the Middle East in my previous life, and that was really just, the work of a young man making his way in the world and trying to earn himself some decent money and get ahead a little bit. And that was before all of the plants and the shamanic stuff. But what that did was it gave us an opportunity to travel a lot to places like India, Sri Lanka, went to many famous places in Iran and Syria and Jordan and Egypt. And so I feel very blessed to have been allowed to be able to do these things and to have that freedom, I guess that's kind of how a lot of these things have transpired, and just being in the right place at the right time and being open to what spirit has to offer, is kind of been one of my mantras for life, and just following what felt right. All of those things happened, I guess.
Nice. Beautiful. And your last name, I didn't even mention it in the bio. Is it Ferrell? Ferrar?
It's Farrell. It's actually an Irish name. Originally in Gaelic is O'Ferrell, means man of valor. That is what it means in Gaelic. My family originates back in Ireland, back from County Longford. And we have an interesting family history that dates to the Battle of Clontarf and when Brian Boru, the High King, fought against the Vikings. my ancestor, he fought and was killed, but for his bravery was awarded many titles and a part of Ireland which our family inhabited for 800 years until we were kicked off by other people. So, that's kind of, that's a little bit of recent family history. But yeah, it kind of means a lot to me. It gives me an anchor from which my feet are on these lands.
Yeah, beautiful. It says, so your website is plantconsciousness.com, correct?
That's right, yeah.
It says you and your wife are both plant spirit healers, geomancers, and plant medicine producers, yeah, spiritual counselors, filmmakers, radio show hosts, public speakers. You got all this, space holders and writers. Tell me a little bit about you and Emma's work together.
I've been very lucky to marry the girl next door that I fancied when I was a teenager, and we spent an amazing life together, traveling, doing all of this work together. And of course, it's been challenging at many points along the way. We're now into our early 40s, and we've been together since we were 21, but known each other since we were 13 years old. And it's been a heck of a journey, but the beautiful thing is that we get to sit and do this work and teach and do our healing together, and we complement each other in many different ways. And it's been a really magical journey to share so deeply with somebody. Yeah,
I would love to have her on another time when we can dive a little deeper into some of your programs. I want to talk more about your Egyptian wake-up call. Tell me about that story and how that went.
Yeah, so it's kind of really where for me, the spiritual journey really started. I mean, in retrospect, many years down the path, I can look back at other parts of my life and say that it was always like that. I just didn't really see it or understand it until we went to Egypt. And we were in the process of leaving Dubai at that point. We've been there 9 years and realized that the corporate world kind of wasn't really for us anymore, and we had a calling to go and live in India, and we've been traveling to India for many years to travel and to just to experience the culture. And we had many Indian friends from our time in Dubai, and so Egypt, we kind of always promised ourselves that we'd only leave the Middle East and move somewhere else once we'd been to Egypt. And so literally we left Dubai and went to Egypt for 3 weeks, and went on this crazy kind of tour run by a lady called Patricia Corey, who's run many spiritual tours, written many books over the years. And I'd read one of her books in Dubai. It's kind of one of the rare spiritual books I'd found in a bookshop out there. And it really resonated with me at the time. It was a lot of stuff to do with the Syrian star system and pyramids and Egypt and Atlantis and the Anunnaki and all of this kind of stuff. I was a massive fan of Graham Hancock's back in the early 90s, and it kind of, that always resonated with me in many ways and all of that kind of stuff. I'm a massive history buff. And my dad was an archaeologist, so I grew up with a lot of ancient history and books, always read a lot as a kid. And so that always appealed to me, and that book kind of triggered something. And so that precipitated a journey to Egypt for me and Emma, with a group of about 50, 60 people, all kind of spiritual light workers. And to be honest, at the time, it was all new to me. I didn't really know what was going on. There was lots of kind of people into crazy things I didn't really understand, and it all seemed pretty wild and wacky. And but as the experience kind of developed over the 10 days, and as the tour developed, we went to different sites, something started to awaken within both me and Emma and several other people, younger people on the tour, and had some very powerful experiences at some of the temples. We were blessed to be able to have access into the Great Pyramid on spring equinox from midnight till 6 a.m. in the morning, just our group, so we were in the whole pyramid for 6 hours, up in the King's Chamber, toning and chanting and journeying, and it was pretty strong. So the trip was like that, and we went to one of the temples where there's a Sekhmet statue, which is very, very powerful, and that's we came to realize some years later that she is the initiator into the Egyptian mysteries, and that kind of was the opening of a door that then unfolded. So that really was the starting point of everything that's come after that. And at that point, we decided that no more corporate business, no more anything like that, and so we made a strong decision to follow our hearts, and that journey then unfolded. And all the things you described in the introduction have been a part of that journey from that point forwards.
So you went from there straight to India and Buddhism and experiencing stuff like that, or?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we were still actually when we first moved to India, we were still doing some various bits of work, and we had off the back of the Egyptian experience, we had a really crazy idea, which is probably one of the, I wouldn't say the worst ideas, but in retrospect, it was never going to happen. And that was to start doing spiritual tours around India. You know, we come from an organizational background and, you know, good at doing that kind of stuff. But India's a whole different ballgame, man. And, you know, we toured with that idea for a while. And then after about 8 months of living there and living through a monsoon season in Goa, which was pretty intense, I kind of realized, like, yeah, this is perhaps not where our focus should be. Or, you know, Spirit was basically saying, no, like, this isn't really what you should be doing. Like, put your attention somewhere else. And Emmett always wanted to go up to Dharamsala and take teachings from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And so after a year of living in Goa, we decided to pack up that and shifted up to the mountains and lived up in the Himalayas for 6 months and really got into the whole Buddhist thing. And also learned a bunch of other stuff. I learned to do crystal healing with a really beautiful Indian couple from the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, really, really heart-based Indian healers. And we spent a lot of time studying with different lamas and rinpoches. We really immersed ourselves in Tibetan Buddhism. And as you kind of read in the introduction, we took teachings from a number of different lamas at that point, including His Holiness and Chamtrul Rinpoche, who taught us about lucid dreaming or dream yoga in the Tibetan tradition. And we spent some time at the Tibetan Dialectic Center learning about emptiness. And so we went quite deep with the Tibetan Buddhist experience there for 6 months. And that then inspired us to move to Italy for 2 years. We went to the center in Dharamsala called Tushita, which I think a little while back was voted one of the 10 must-do things in your whole life is to do a 10-day Buddhist introduction retreat at Tushita. I think that was in, I don't know, like Condé Nast or something like that. You know, those kind of bucket list things. And we did a couple of retreats there, and that kind of struck a chord for both of us, and so that prompted us to stick around. And then we did 6 months, and then there was an opportunity to go and study a 2-year master's degree at a semi-monastic centre in Tuscany, run by the same organisation that ran the centre at Tushita in Dharamsala. And so by that point, we'd closed our business in the Middle East and earned ourselves enough abundance to be able to then kind of put it into our own personal development. And so we took 2 years off and went to live in Italy at the monastic centre there. And that was really, really special.
You two kids growing up and being renegades, being mavericks, spiritually developing yourself, and being married. And that's just beautiful to me.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, man. It's been a strong experience, but the beautiful thing, you know, it's only when you've kind of gone some way down the path that you can look back with the benefit of hindsight and see things that you didn't really understand so well at the time. You just kind of did them, but you can see sometimes that there were fingers of higher forces at work, directing and pushing and blocking in certain cases. And just being open to that process has been a huge teacher for me over the years, and it's really helped me to let go of a lot of stuff. Having that foundation in Buddhism has proved time and time again just to be a really solid foundation, particularly in the work with the Entheogens. You know, I think the first 2 years that I was learning from Mother Ayahuasca, everything that she showed me came through in a very Buddhist way. And it was like almost the teachings that I'd received in my head, the transmissions that had gone into me that I had kind of understood in a logical way, suddenly kind of started to manifest in the principles of ethics, morality, and all of these different, really solid foundational principles that Buddhism has to offer. And over the years, I've seen many other people doing well with the entheogenic plants and fungi, and quite often they have Taoist or Buddhist foundations in their work. And I think that's really important. It seems to work in many ways. Those principles are so important in the work with the entheogens. Absolutely.
I myself have that bridge between Buddhism and the work with entheogens, and I recommend it for just about everybody. I see very little difference between some of the workings of the mind from the Buddhist perspective, especially Tibetan Buddhism, to the workings of the mind with the indigenous peoples of South America and North America.
Yeah, that's very true. Tibetan Buddhism is very shamanic anyway. There's a very strong presence of otherworld beings, protector spirits, protector deities, unhelpful spirits, and those stories that you see in the Tibetan Buddhist literature, they're pretty common the world over. Actually, the characters might differ slightly, but the principles are much the same. And so I love the fact. I love the historical energy that comes out of Tibetan Buddhism, the fact that it comes from Tibet, such a magical place, and I feel, again, blessed that those teachings were released to the world. You know, we can often think badly about what happened when the Chinese invaded Tibet and all the things that have happened subsequently. But if that hadn't happened, maybe we wouldn't have Tibetan Buddhism so freely available in the world. So, you know, I often think of these things, you know, what is often a tragic situation often allows something very special to occur for many other beings. So, you know, yes, Tibetan Buddhism, I feel they don't talk about plants so much, actually. But I think that's maybe just a geographical thing. I don't think there are so many plants growing up in the high Himalayas. So maybe you know, the spirits they connect with, you know, are much more animistic. Maybe the mountains and the rocks and these kind of elemental forces, I think, are much more present in Tibetan Buddhism.
Right, and it's very rural up there. It's also, I heard once upon a time when I was doing yoga instructor training that your consciousness in those mountains is different. It's higher elevation. Your oxygen levels are different. There's a lot going on for the body and mind system.
Yeah, I mean, one of the experiences I had when we were in Peru a couple of years back was up in the Sacred Valley, and you know, just being up so high, your horizons are so much further, so much more expansive, and that, you know, that energy is all up. It's all up and out, you know. And then when I was down in the jungle, I felt it was very in and kind of moody. You know, you can't see much beyond the tree in front of you in the jungle, never mind something that's 2 or 3 miles away. But up in the mountains, you can see even the curvature of the earth. And for me, that just allows so much more freedom in my awareness and my consciousness. And I've always liked the mountain energy. It's always a place I felt comfortable.
Very nice, very nice. So this sort of brings me to my next question along your journey, your travels. It seems like you then, I found out about you years ago, you then took on like a plant spirit consciousness conference. Is that what happened?
Well, you know, the truth of the story is we can't really take any credit for the events, plant consciousness and everything that's come after that. It was actually the first time I met the mother medicine, and there'd been an idea formulating in my mind whilst we were studying in Italy about sustainable communities and connection to the earth and how we needed to reconnect to the earth. And the idea wasn't really formulated properly, but it was stirring. Something was kind of bubbling up. Is the way when these events are created from our side. It's kind of a process. And it came through very clearly in that first meeting with the mother. Is like, she said to me, that event you're thinking about organizing, it needs to be about plant intelligence. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm having a conversation with a plant and it's telling me that it wants us to organize an event about plant intelligence. Hey, that seems like a good idea. And, you know, I then shortly afterwards was having a meditation with Nettle, which is something I like to do while I was studying at the Tibetan Center. And Nettle is now a very firm friend and very strong plant ally of mine. And I've had very many interesting conversations with Nettle. And actually, you know, the connection between Nettle and Buddhism is very strong because there is a famous Tibetan ascended master called Milarepa. He was what you call a Maha Siddha. He was a lay person who practiced his tradition, but as a lay person, not as a monk. And it's much harder actually, and it's acknowledged within Buddhism that to practice a life as a Buddhist as an everyday person rather than secluding yourself away in a monastery where you only have the focus without the temptation is a particular aspect of the Tibetan Buddhist path. And he locked himself away in a cave, I think, for 20 years, meditating. And the only thing that he would consume was nettle. He would drink nettle tea or nettle juice every morning. And in some pictures, some of the tankards that you see, his skin actually appears green because he drank that much of it, that his skin and his hair went green. And you know, I always liked this story, and so he's one of my favorite teachers from the Tibetan Buddhist tract. But the plant gave us a name. He said, oh yeah, that event that the mother told you about the other week to do with the plant intelligence, it has to be called plant consciousness. And I was like, wow, that's so obvious, that's so cool. You know, and so that's it. And so that's how the first plant consciousness came into be. It was from those two plants, and their desire for us, you know, as you know, we had a whole 10, 20 years between us of event organization at that point, and so we were perfectly equipped to put on an event. We had marketing, sales, organizational skills, and we knew how to do big events, and so it was the perfect fit. And it was at a time when, you know, there was starting to be the rumblings of some of the research that then led Peter Verleben to do his book, you know, The Hidden Life of Trees, and Suzanne Simard's work with the mother trees and the mycorrhizal network. You know, this is all stuff that's come into the awareness of the general public only in the last 3 or 4 years, really. And so I kind of our starting point was trying to show people that there is a higher intelligence to plants and fungi, not just with the entheogens, but all plants. And that was the starting point of what became an incredible 5-year journey where we met many amazing people, many amazing teachers, and got to share those with many, many amazing people who came to our events. And that was really, every one of those was very special, and in many different ways. And they covered many different types of plants, many indigenous traditions, many indigenous shamans and healers came to speak at that event. And it was always a celebration of our connection to Mother Earth and to the plants and the fungi as well. And I think it was a meeting where people met at a heart level through the green beings. And it's also where we got to meet one of our dearest teachers, Pam Montgomery. She spoke at the very first edition of that event, and that opened up a whole new track of plant spirit healing work that many people have benefited from and are now sharing also in Britain. And also my teacher, Carol, in Ireland. I always like to pay homage to all of the teachers that we've learned from. This is a very Buddhist thing, And those two ladies really opened the doorway to experiencing many things within the native plants. So plant consciousness really has a lot to answer for, but all good stuff.
What years were those conferences?
So the last one was last year. The journey came to an end last year. So I think we started in 2013 or 2014 maybe. I lose track. We also run other events like the Shamanic Lands, and we ran events in Ireland, and there's been so many over the years that sometimes I forget which one exactly was where. But yeah.
Yeah, that Shamanic Lands looked really exciting to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's an ancestry thing, but I've always felt a real connection to the yew tree. And I think once in a while, like I go in dreams to visit that part of the world, and I see the yew, and it is just like this vocal, deep, feminine, ancient, almost like crone-like energy. But it's not like sort of like we picture the crone as this thing that's falling apart in some traditions, like it's almost like mummified and not virile. This is not that. It's like there's a lot of water energy in there, and there's plasticity to it, and it's very interesting because once in a while I visit those trees, and they don't grow around here. I heard they grow up in the Pacific Northwest, but I haven't actually been close to one physically this lifetime. And I want to talk about that if possible.
Yeah, sure. I mean, before we started the interview on camera, we were just talking about your heritage, right? And you have a Welsh grandfather, and so Wales has the highest concentration of ancient yew trees anywhere on the planet. We have many trees here that are possibly more than 2, 3, 4, even 5,000 years, and possibly even older in some cases. We don't know. It's impossible to really accurately age many of these trees. But where we live in Wales, we have many ancient yew tree circles. Now most of them have churches, or Christian churches, in them. But originally, probably many of them would have been druid circles and ancient groves for the elders. The yew tree is really Yggdrasil in the northern traditions. This is the world tree, the tree of eternity. This is a tree that has seen everything on this planet. It's seen the entire spectrum of human existence. It was here way before that. This tree is our ancestor. It's the ancestor. It's the longest living continuous being on Earth as a species. And so you think about that from an energetic point of view, that means the yew tree has the world dream within it, hence the world tree. And so it's kind of, it's interesting you were saying about the feminine aspect. A lot of the yew tree is about the womb and about birthing. It's very much about the blood and about the womb. And what's interesting about the yew tree is that it's pretty much there in every single ancient mystery school, from the Egyptian to the Rosicrucians to the Templars. And that's what Michael Dunning taught us, the yew mysteries. He had a very powerful experience with a yew tree. He spent 9 years convalescing from a very serious illness under a very powerful tree up in Scotland. And he would go there to recuperate, and through his process of being healed by the tree. I mean, it's a long story, one that he tells much better than me, and it's worth checking out. It's on Wisdom Hub, actually. But that tree healed him, and in the process of doing that, the tree spoke to him. And many years later, after that experience, he brought the yew mysteries through, and we recently completed our U Mysteries experience with him last year, and he's also teaching some other groups now. But we believe this is the first time that a U Mystery school has been taught on these lands, possibly for several thousand years. And that's really, really, really nice, but it felt very powerful, and many people have now gone through that experience and have become initiates. It's a challenging tree, you know. It's going to show you those things, those karmas that need to be resolved, and it's going to keep on at you until they're resolved. It does incinerate karma, but it's you know, like all of these healings, there's a process to it, right? So, but yeah, very powerful tree, and very mysterious tree, and a lot to say about it, really.
Beautiful. Yeah, I hope one day to actually touch one of those trees with my hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's to touch a tree that's, you know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old, and just to sit under it is quite an experience. And we're blessed enough to actually live under one. We live next to a graveyard here in Wales, and right next to our house is a big yew tree that's at least 1,000 years old, maybe more. We don't know. So yeah, that's. The yew is a massive part of our work. It's been a massive part of our journey, and for me, really, it's the boss. It's the ultimate tree. It's the ultimate guide in all of this work, because it's the tree of eternity. You know, where else are you going to go?
Yeah, wow. So I kind of want to go back to something that is sort of connected to the idea of being there with the trees and touching and communing with the trees in the Druid lands. In Egypt, did you find that you had something that I, in American English, call psychometry, that there was psychometric experiences, like where people would touch the rocks or the pyramids or objects, and they would get feelings and memories come back from time long past?
Yeah, that definitely happened. Not really to myself so much at that time. I mean, for me, the true narrative of the Egypt story kind of emerged over a number of years and became much more fulfilled much further down the road. But I saw many people having stronger experiences on the Egypt trip at the time. I just thought they were a little bit crazy, to be honest. But you know, looking back now, I understand what was going on for them much more clearly. And there were many very advanced spiritual healers, people who've done a lot of work on themselves and had really clear channels and were able to tap into those energies. And yeah, I didn't really have those experiences so much in Egypt. I still had a lot of inner work to do, a lot of clearing, and that was really the opening of the door for me then. But subsequently, I've had similar experiences in different places, yes, in different parts of the planet, where we can access into the noosphere or the space of those lands. And sometimes, if we're lucky and we have the connections energetically, or maybe the spiritual lineages, we can access stuff in those spaces. But you know, that's part of the journey that we all get to go on, and to find out which of those places that we have those connections to. For some people, you know, probably down in Peru or Brazil. Other people, it's Egypt, or maybe Africa or Australia. You know, some of us have probably walked this planet a long time, you know, just can't remember it.
Yes. So that's great. You're going to help me dig in. I want the meat and potatoes, if you will, of our conversation, is to like really jump in there and be like, all right, so what have you experienced with the plants? What have you experienced with the lands? How have I don't really want to get into the past lives and stuff as much, but I want to get into like what memories, information is directly shared between you and the plant spirits and the spirit of the place, spirit of land.
Yeah, so this forms a core part of what we teach on our Way of the Warrior Healer, and this is really from a lot of the stuff that we've learned from the different teachers, from the plant work, the tree work. You know, being down in the Amazon, we learned a lot from our teacher Kurikindi about the ways of the Amazon, the ways of Amazonian shamanism, just how dangerous it is. It was a real eye-opener, and that journey was very strong in many different ways, and I came back from that experience very different. But I had a lot of stuff that I had to clear, in all honesty. And I guess the starting place for me to answer that question is really to use an analogy from the Buddhist world, which I like to share with people. Is in Tibetan Buddhism, they describe us as being a muddy glass. You know, it starts off as a clear crystal glass, but over many experiences, it fills up with the rubbish, the junk, the crap, the silt, so to speak. And so by the end, it's kind of a muddy glass, and you can't really see anything inside. But slowly you start to do the cleaning, the inner cleaning, and the glass starts to become clear and transparent. And the more of that you do through working with the plants, by the end of it, you have the clear, luminescent, transparent glass, which really is an analogy for your true nature. And I think that once I kind of started to understand that some years into the work with the plant spirits, working with my teachers Carol and Pam, and I started to feel shifts in consciousness. I started to understand things and to connect to other parts of my consciousness that I hadn't really been so aware of before. That's when the plants started to speak to me. But I guess the biggest thing I'll say is that the plants took me out of my head. I was way up in here for way too long. Very well-read, very logical, very sort of practical in that sense, could organize things, manage things very well, but almost to the point of being a bit OCD, a bit of a control freak perhaps. And the plants slowly took me out of my head and into my heart, and then started to communicate through the heart. And I think that's one of the things that I'll say when working with the native plants is that if we try to think our way into a conversation with them, we're not going to get very far. We have to really breathe into our hearts and meet them there. And, you know, that was a journey that probably took me 5 or 6 years to work that out, you know. And this is the thing with the plants, is if you're expecting to munch a couple of plants and drink a few brews and hopefully by next weekend we're going to be a shaman, then I hate to burst the bubble, man. It's not really like that, you know. It's a long journey, but the journey is the journey. You know, there's no real destination to this. The journey is everything. Right. And that was one of the big teachings for me from the plants over the years. It's just let go of it, brother. You know, just accept everything and understand that it's all perfect in its own moment. Even if it seems horrendously awful and bad in places and challenging beyond belief, it's okay. You know, those are the great teachings that we receive. And, you know, it's nice when things are good and blissful, but we don't learn a great deal in those moments. We feel good for a little bit, but the real juicy stuff is in the shadow work. And I think that for me has been a real big part of the journey is working on my own shadow and seeing the shadow in the world and seeing what we have to clean up. You know, this is the job that faces all of us now, is to clean ourselves up and to start work on cleaning up the traumas of our ancestors, traumas that we inflicted on ourselves and so on and so forth. And we can see this manifesting now in everything that's going on the planet. This is the shit coming to the surface now. And a lot of our work is just to help people in the same way that we were taught to realize who we are. That's my teacher Kuri Kindi said when we went to Ecuador. He said, I'm not really going to teach you anything, man. Yes, you're going to get lots of training, and that's going to come from the plants, and basically my job is just to clean you up and let you find out who you are so you know why you're here. And he said, once you know that, then everything becomes a lot more straightforward. And he was right, absolutely right. But that, you know, that's something that took me the better part of 7 or 8 years to work out also. So the journey is everything, and don't feel the need to rush anywhere. You know, when you get somewhere, what are you going to do, man? You can have a cup of coffee and then go off on another journey, right? So you may as well just make it one long glorious adventure. And you know, I think the work with the plants not only connects us into our heart, it connects us back to Mother Nature, to Mother Earth. And in the process of that, we start to find compassion for many things, including our fellow human beings who are suffering. All of us, you know, on this planet, everyone is suffering in some way. And the plants really help you to find compassion for our brothers and sisters that are suffering. And that's been, kind of a large part of the journey with the plants for me, I guess.
So much healing can just take place when we focus on compassion, we hold compassion energetically. Whether it's through pain or pleasure, we're just holding compassion, and that's like such a beautiful and important teaching of Buddhism. And I think it ultimately is why I resolve it. I believe in Buddhism as not a religious thing, because compassion is something that even animals have, nature has. It's pervasive. There's no dogma in compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the simplest way I understand it is something that we get taught is that the right hand of compassion sits in the left hand of wisdom. And I never really understood this for many years, but I understand it much more clearly now. The wisdom really is another way of saying direct experience. And the only things we can never, ever really know truly are the things that we experience to ourselves. Otherwise, it's somebody else's experience that we've read or heard about. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not, you know, it's their experience. That's fine. You know, it's a truth for them. So wisdom is direct experience. And when we know something to be a truth, we feel it in our body. We know it to be truthful. No need for fancy stories or credible visions. We know it's a truth, right? And from that wisdom, we understand the depth of our own suffering. And from that place, we can start to feel compassion because we understand what it is to suffer with our stuff. And, you know, that is what we get taught. So I understand now that to have that wisdom allows you to feel compassion. And so I understood that teaching. Again, this really came through on a plant journey many years later. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your plant consciousness conference, and then you mentioned within that the Shamanic Lands thing, and that was also, if I could get out and travel the world like you, I would be there in a heartbeat. Tell us about what happened at the Shamanic Lands conference.
So yeah, as you mentioned in the bio, I come from a strong Celtic background, Cornish and Irish ancestry, and we now live in Wales. And after living overseas for 15 years with all these adventures in the Middle East and India and Italy, a little bit in France too, also in between around the Italy trip, staying at Emma's mother's place in the south of France. It was around that time, the same journey, in fact, called me home, the very first journey with a mother. I got this very strong message like, brother, okay, your time having fun overseas is coming to an end now and you have to come home. Your land wants you back. And through a very synchronistic set of processes that actually largely involved the U-True, we found ourselves living in South Wales and in a very special little house near some very ancient yew trees. And in the very first month of living on that land, both me and Emma, we heard this song, this kind of call arising out of the land from our ancestors. And, I'd always been very interested in Druidry and Celtic shamanism, these kinds of things. And we wanted to share that. We wanted to, kind of step up and say, hey, we've been fortunate enough to have many interesting experiences with other cultures, other traditions, other shamanic traditions, other shamanic plants. But actually, in history, Britain, the British Isles, these lands have been regarded as highly energetic, highly magical. And we have many ancient magical shamanic traditions based around plants and Druidry and these things, and we wanted to have a big remembrance about that. We wanted, something was coming through us and we could see other people were having experiences down in South America and coming back home to these lands and saying, that was amazing, but I want to connect with the spirits and the plants of my land. And, we don't have these unbroken traditions that some places like Tibet or even the plant cultures of South America have. But what we do have buried deep in the land is the memories of the Druids and the ancestors, and that's accessible to all of us through working with the plants and working through the geomantic principles and also working with our native entheogens. We can access those places, and in that we start to recover the information about these old traditions that have never really died.
Tell us about geomancy and what that means.
So geomancy is kind of an old phrase. We joke with our teacher Patrick, sounds a little bit strange, but what it really means is land healing. It's another form of dowsing. It's working with earth energies and working with the middle world spirits, mostly to engender healing so that human and land relationships can come to a place of harmony and balance. That's ultimately the aim of what we're trying to do. And sometimes that involves work like house clearances, working with the yin, the water lines, the yang, the solar lines, and making sure there are no unhelpful energies being piped in from the nearby sewage pit or a quarry or something like that. The World Health Organization did a survey some years ago and said that they found that roughly 1 in 3 houses in the world were suffering from some type of house sickness. And they understood that in a certain way, but we can understand it shamanically from the energetic perspective that houses can contain spirits that have passed on, they can contain unhappy nature spirits, and if things are not in harmony and balance in that way, then the humans existing in those spaces are going to find that their lives are going to be challenged and difficult. And sometimes people move into buildings, for example, that maybe once was a church and has been converted now into a house. And, maybe the spirits that were in the church before don't know it's a house now, and nobody explained that to them. So the work of a geomancer is really to interface between the humans and the spirit world to ensure that everything is put into a place of balance. And if there's a change of dynamic within the living abode, that everybody who needs to know is kept informed, and so accordingly the spirit world can also adjust. That's the basics. There's a lot to it, right? But that's the basics of geomancy.
Beautiful. I see you as a very shamanistic teacher, shamanistic friend of mine, and I want to dive into some of our conversations that we've had on previous calls just between us. But I feel the value for our listeners, because some of those things that we talked about, they're building rapport between us, and they're amazing stories. And I even recite them to some of my local friends and students, and they're just like on the edge of their seats. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? You have some really interesting wisdom, life experience, and ultimately I think it helps bring people into a place of finding compassion. But the value that is out in the world, that's being offered to the world right now, as far as I can tell, based on your website and what we've talked about, is this Way of the Warrior Healer program. Tell us about that. Look, you've got elder, you're working with sacred basil, the dandelion, nettle, and lady's mantle. Some amazing things here. And as far as I can tell, a lot of these things aren't regulated sacred plants. They're not illegal substances. You're just working with what medicines are there in your area. Tell us about it.
So this comes back to a core part of our own journey, which is the plant spirit work that we learned with Carol and Pam. And it's really coming out of the traditions of South America, the plant diets, spending time imbibing a particular brew of a plant, and really entering into a very still space. We fast this comes out of a plant dieting space initially, and from that, this program is developed through our communication with our plant allies. But it's the same as your Sananga shamans, your arbaleros, your curanderos. We can diet with these plants, and we can form alliances, spiritual connections that we then work with in healing capacities. And maybe the entheogenic plants open us up in that kind of very visual way, but actually all plants are psychedelic in my experience. And once we kind of allow ourselves to get beyond that very sort of razzmatazz need for the big light show and the visions, actually the work that we've done with plants like mugwort and dandelion and nettle, it's like the gifts of healing these plants have are so strong. For me, mugwort is one of the strongest plants on the planet. It's what we call Artemisia vulgaris. Very witchy plant, has a very strong connection to witches. It's the witch queen of the herb world, and that was the very first plant that I ever dieted with, and I met very strongly the spirits of that plant. In fact, both me and Emma did it at the same time, and that was the beginning of our plant spirit journey. And so over the many years of doing the plant diets with Pam and learning her tradition of plant spirit healing, and also Carol's, it took a while. I was a bit of a blockhead, in all honesty. I was kind of not that sensitive, a little bit dumb, a little bit slow on the uptake sometime, and I had a lot of crap to clear out too. But eventually, through perseverance, I kept turning up, and we worked a lot with Pam. We were blessed enough that she wanted to work with us in Britain, so we would bring her over, and we had a group of plant spirit trainees, and we did 5 years training with her through different diets and different mechanisms, and she taught us all these different techniques to heal with native plants. And that's just work that we've taken deeper again and developed ourselves with the other things that we've learnt. And we have realized that these plants like dandelion, when we really drop into a deep space and communicate with the intelligence of the plant, not necessarily things we read about it in a book, but we drop in and we have a direct experience ourselves, plant can teach us many different things. And if we add into that mix native entheogens, then we can have very quick, very clear connections to these plant spirits, exactly the same way as the shamans in South America do. They use their native plants, and we don't have a tradition of that in these lands that's in the modern awareness, but we're pretty sure that the ancestors, particularly the Druids, the Ovates, several thousand years ago before the Romans came, they did this, and the cunning folk and the witches of the past, they also knew how to work with plants in this way and to work with them as allies. So this is nothing particularly unique or special to us. This is a world phenomenon. People all over the world have realized that there's a higher intelligence in nature, and that it's my personal belief that the plants are really what we would call in Buddhism bodhisattvas. They are beings who have become realized enough that they have come back to the planet to offer their healing gift to us all because they want to, not because they have to, but because they want to. And that is why we find that nature gives so freely, because they want to help us, they want to heal us. And that's been one of the greatest revelations, I guess, I've had from the plants, is that understanding and feeling that love that they have for us. And if we just stop and we pay attention and we pay respect and we honor the nettle, the dandelion, these are incredibly powerful plants and superfoods, both on a physical level and on a spiritual level. And there's a lot to learn, and it kind of feels like we're just beginning to scratch the surface of something very old and very magical, but also really needed at this time on the planet when, whatever we think about climate change, whoever we listen to, whatever conspiracy theories we do or we don't believe, we can be pretty sure that there is definitely environmental degradation going on that is partially down to humans polluting the land. We have to hold up our hands to that and say we are responsible for putting nuclear waste into the Pacific Ocean and putting pesticides on the land. We did those things, and it's killed many species. And so that's because we are disconnected from nature. And once we get back into that place of being connected, we don't want to do those things anymore. We make different choices, more conscious choices, more compassionate choices. And that's a journey that I invite all of your listeners to take. I'm sure many of them are already on that journey anyway, but when we're talking about compassion, for me, that's where it came from. It's from that experience and from that journey.
That was a blessed sharing. Thank you so much. It's so funny because I am right now kind of really diving into Artemisia vulgaris mugwort. And I've been doing that for like a month because I've been teaching and sharing Toltec traditions of shamanism on dreaming and lucid dreaming. And my lady friend, whom I consider my beloved, my girlfriend, she gave me an essential oil of mugwort. And that was just like a week ago. And before that, I went and picked mugwort wild. And I remember when I was growing up here in San Diego, it was just one of the first plants I connected with picking wild. And the nettle too, it grows here wild in San Diego. And so my teacher, green medicine deer, Dennis, he's shown me these local plants, and like I didn't really get it in the beginning. I didn't really get that they had spirit. And I wanted, the light show and like, hey, well, we're in San Diego, mescaline and mushrooms and things like that. These things naturally occur. Why aren't we doing that? He's like, well, you need this background and these other plants. These are really what's more common, and they're bitter and they do healing work. And it's like, okay. So in my 20s, I didn't really respect it, but now I see how much farther things can be pushed. And you're really opening my eyes to experiences that I've had with nettle that are miraculous. Like I had this, my producer, my former wife, Xana Moonflower, who was on this show a long time ago, we went up to the Pacific, we went up to where the redwoods grow, the Armstrong Grove, and I had sage in the car, and it was a spirit for me, a plant spirit for me, and a medicine that I used because my people and I grew up here and stuff. And so salvia, I think it's Apiana, but it's white sage basically. And she's allergic to it, highly allergic to it. Had it in the car, didn't know she was having an allergy craziness to it. We were just traveling in the car and she's like full on allergy in her face is getting puffy. And we stopped up in Sebastopol, California, which is Northern California, near where the redwoods grow. And she went to a little store that was like a herbal co-op and picked up a bunch of stinging nettle tea. And I'm like, yeah, stinging nettle, I know about this. I picked it in the wild, San Diego, no big deal. Like her swelling went down immediately. Her face changed. It was like this whole miraculous breathing, non-histamine reaction, like an antihistamine reaction. And I was impressed at how much that little of a plant can affect things and change and even like cause physical transformation in the body. And so you're really reminding me of like how much nettle has provided for my family, has provided and shown me that it is a legitimate and honorable teacher, and like a bodhisattva, like you said, really just giving. And didn't the Egyptians also use that? Wasn't that an Egyptian thing?
To use Artemisia?
No, a nettle.
Yeah, I'm not sure about nettle, but I kind of think that Artemisia originally has come out of the Mediterranean, and Artemis was a Greek goddess. If you want, we can jump into a bit of mugwort and nettle history here. These are super powerful plants, man. Mugwort, as you said, is a great dreaming plant. It's a plant for oneironauts. It's not exactly psychoactive, but it sits right on the cusp. It has tujone. And there are other members of the Artemisia family, particularly Artemisia absinthium, which is wormwood, which is another one of my favorite plants. Very strong shadow plant, incredibly powerful, a little bit toxic if we have too much of it, but great for parasite cleanses. And all of the Artemisias can help us to see. They are plants for seership, basically. But they also take us into the shadow world, and they help us to understand our shadow and to see the shadow and to be okay with the shadow. Artemisia vulgaris is an incredibly powerful plant. Its healing gifts are immense, and they span everything from dreaming to protection against the dark arts to midwifing skills to putting heat into the body. It's used in moxibustion in the Japanese 5 medicine. practice of moxibustion. So, when it's burnt, it has the closest temperature to the human body's natural temperature of any plant. And so you put it over the acupuncture points and you burn the, and it pushes its heat, its chi into the body. And so it makes cold parts of the body warm again. And so, your experience with mugwort is very similar to our first experience of mugwort. Many people's, it's a very, very pushy, powerful plant. And when it wants your attention, it makes sure that it gets your attention to the point where you'll keep seeing it until you stop and pay attention and start paying respect. It'll keep appearing and appearing. So it seems like that journey's already started for you, which is lovely. That's how it begins with mugwort, and that's how the plant spirit path started for us. And that's why we teach mugwort so often. We always do a retreat every year, because it's one of the plants that people wanting to enter into relationships with plants can have quite a strong experience with, without the need for entheogenic plants. I think the last time we did a mugwort full moon dreaming and healing retreat was last year. And every single one of the group, the spirit of the plant came to visit them either in their dreams very, very clearly, or in the journey work that we did over the weekend. It was just incredible to see so many people have such a strong reaction from a plant spirit. And not all plant spirits come so easily. Some of them are a little bit more shy or a little bit more challenging. But mugwort is very open to human relationships, and she has done for several thousand years. That's why there's so much information about her, going back to the time of the Greeks and the Romans. So many things to say about mugwort. Love that plant to bits. And nettle, like I said, nettle has revealed some surprising things. It's a great plant for meditating with. Its whole energy as an adaptogen is of one of balance and equipoise. So when we want to dive into the depths, we need to hold that place of equipoise. And so nettle is incredibly good at holding that space for us. And, it's also very strong on boundaries. With its sting, it creates very concise boundaries of where it grows, quite often around hawthorn trees, interestingly enough, on these lands. But it's also a superfood, right? It's an adaptogen. It's always trying to bring us back into a place of balance and harmony. And it grows everywhere. And, it makes a great tea. It's great with poached eggs if you wilt it. It's super tasty to eat, at least I think so. And it's one of those plants that you can never have enough of. It's never going to create toxicity in the body. So you can drink nettle tea every day. And, every time you drink that tea, it's doing something good for you. And I love that, man. Every time I put plants into my body, I know that on some level, some type of healing is going on. And that's not something you can say necessarily about all Western medicines, So that's why I love the plants.
It's a beautiful communion, and I've been taking, I'm not nettle, but I'll go pick some now that I'm aware. I'm like, whoa, hey, I can go pick some. And mugwort grows like right next to nettle in my area, so I'm really excited about doing that again. And I picked some wild mugwort a couple months back on an Indian reservation here, and I've been making it as a tea, and I've also been getting commercial mugwort at a local herb store. And so the difference in the spirit is so intense, and the flavor is so intensely different. And so I'm noticing the localities for our Artemisia vulgaris cause different effects, and that was beautiful. Like, wow, hey, this smells different, tastes different, does different things. I'm getting really intense dreaming as a result, and I pretty much take mugwort every day. That, and I've been working with Calea zacatechichi, the Aztec dreaming grass. And so I'm having really intense dreaming experiences. And a friend of mine who's in like the Toltec tradition, who was on this show a few episodes back, and I've been learning a lot about that style of shamanism. He's like saying, like, if you can't remember your dreams, and I've always been able to do this, and I'm perplexed why people don't remember their dreams. He's saying if you can't remember your dreams, you don't know what your reality is in this. It's like being created on your subconscious. Your subconscious is your baseline. And these plant teachers, you can call them onerogens. I still think of them as entheogens, but they're definitely onerogenic. These sacred plants, well, that's a better nomer, I suppose. They're teaching us how to wake up in this reality, and that the dreaming and this reality are interconnected in strong and close relationship. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you said is totally spot on. And, in many indigenous cultures believe that the real existence is the dream world. That this is, of course, the illusion. This is the unreality. And so, these plants show us in our natural state when we go into dream that we are just reverting back to our natural state. And that is what many indigenous people believe. And that's why you'll find mugwort or artemisia is pretty much used the world over, from the Ainu people of Japan to First Nations people in North America. We had Linda Black Elk speak at Plant Consciousness a couple of years ago, and she talked a lot about Artemisias, particularly vulgaris, but also Artemisia frigida, which grows a lot and native Indian people use, and also Artemisia tridentata, which is more commonly known as sagebrush, which is not a salvia, it's not a sage, but it does the same job. And with the current situation with white sage being overpicked and oversold, we can use our native plants. We can use Artemisia plants for smudging and purification and cleansing, and they're very, very good at that. And interestingly, because Linda is also an ethnobotanist, she has access to laboratories, and she's taken some of these plants into the laboratory to test scientifically, and they can see that when you burn Artemisia plants, they actually kill pathogens in the air. So yes, there's a spiritual smudging. They're very good at removing energetic parasites. This is one of wormwood's gifts, is to remove not just the physical gut parasites, the different types of worms, but also the etheric parasites. And I kind of had a very interesting experience when I first connected with wormwood many years ago, that I got taken right back to the Victorian era, which is when absinthe really comes into our awareness. And there's all the stories of Van Gogh going mad and people saying it's the absinthe. And so what I understand from wormwood is that this is a plant that allows you to see very clearly many things around you, particularly on the energetic level, almost too much sometimes. And so you can see energetic vampires. And I believe that this is where the stories from Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker came from. They were drinking this absinthe a lot. And I think seeing many things, because it's a slightly hallucinogenic plant. And so I believe the stories that they wrote were inspired by things that they were seeing when they were consuming these kind of medicinal, high alcohol spirit drinks. And so it's like, yeah, we can really learn a lot from the Artemisias, and shamanically they are for me some of the most powerful plants that are around. And they can show us many things about the nature of reality as well, if we choose to let them.
That is so fun that we have had similar herbal experience, and like even my herbalist teacher was like, "Hey, do a parasite cleanse, take some absinthe, like wormwood," and I did that in my first. I think it was like about my first year of running this show, so that must have been 2010 or something like that. And I mean, these moments where I'm taking these really bitter herbs and going through the process of trying to live a daily normal life while the plant spirit is running through my organs. It's an altered state. It's an altered form of consciousness. And I would, there's some like, hopefully we'll have some like background story of fireside chats and stuff. But I would remember this one story where I was scheduled to go to a social event, and I'd be like, I'm fine, let's go. And then 5 minutes later, I'm getting dressed, putting my shoes on. I'm so sick. I'm so sick, like parasite cleansing, absinthe, sick. Just, I need to lay down. I'm hot. I'm sick. 5 minutes later, okay, I'm ready to go. And it was like off and on, just weird.
Yeah, the parasite, I've done several parasite cleanses now with wormwood, with different varieties of them. I mean, Artemisias are really my thing, and I have many different species, different varieties that I've collected and grown from different parts of the world. And we try to do a parasite cleanse every year, but we decided when we went to Ecuador, rather than using normal wormwood, Artemisia absinthium, that we would use sweet wormwood, which has a lot of anti-malarial properties. In fact, a lot of scientists have just come to the conclusion that in terms of fighting malaria, this is the most powerful antidote, the most powerful plant that there is. And I was growing it. It's called Artemisia annua. It's a very, very beautiful, very fine leafed plant. Not a native to Britain, but grows in many places, I think in America also. And so I'd grown this plant, and I collected enough, and I ground it, and I made capsules, and we did the whole 3-week parasite cleanse. The Dr. Hulda Clark is a very good protocol. You can find that protocol online, and I've done that many times using clove and black walnut hull tincture. And it can be strong, a full parasite cleanse for 3 weeks when you're, 10 days in with wormwood, it's strong. It's a strong plant, and it, and it can be a little bit tricky sometimes, very surreal, and you kind of really have to learn how to hold yourself through those moments. But we did this particular plant parasite cleanse with Artemisia annua, and we didn't have to have any malaria jabs. We went down into the Amazon, we came back, we didn't have any parasites, didn't have any worms, nothing. And we told some of our friends who were about to go out to Africa to do some work with the African root and with the Bwiti people, and one of our friends went out, and she took this medicine with her, And every single one of her group got malaria and had to be hospitalized apart from her.
Wow.
And the local just like, wow, like how come you didn't get malaria like everybody else? I said, I'm not really sure, but I think it's this medicine my friends gave me. They told me it's good for malaria. And so now she's through that journey, a year or two back, she's got many people out in Africa interested now to go, and they're trying to grow the same plant. There's another variety of Artemisia that grows in Africa, but that particular one I don't think is particularly native. But from my experience, we have to, this is the thing about the plant work, is many, Western medical students would say that's crazy, you're bonkers, you need to take the inoculations. And it's like, no, man, in my experience, I trust my plants. I trust their healing. I trust what they can do. And either I trust them all of the way or I don't trust them at all. There can't be any in between. Because if we're in between, then we don't trust and then the medicine doesn't work as well. So there's a lot of trust with the plants, and that's something that takes a while. And again, this was a really amazing teaching from Mother Ayahuasca. I think for the first few years that I was with that medicine, I thought she was trying to harm me in some way, and I didn't really trust her enough to let go fully. And eventually, there was kind of like, look, man, if you're not going to let go properly, I'm going to have to do something drastic and make you let go, and that kind of opened the floodgates. Once I learned to trust that plant, it kind of helped me to trust a lot more plants and to trust in the holistic healing process that the plants can give us on spiritual, emotional, and physical levels.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I want to remind our listeners, if you're involved in any of these healing processes, oftentimes in my personal experience, and I don't know if it's like this for you, David, but the healing that you want isn't the one that you're going to get immediately. It's the healing that you need.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If we go into a healing process with a preconceived idea of how it's going to be, we're going to get kicked around pretty hard, man, because we just have to let the plants do their thing. And whether it's through tinctures, entheogens, or flower essences, we make flower essence, and they can be really powerful. That's quantum medicine that you're working with there. You're letting the plant into your energy system, into your body, and it's going to do its thing. And we just have to trust that process. And I kind of think sometimes Western medicine has made things difficult for everybody. We have this kind of instant fix. And yes, a lot of Western medicine is good, and we need certainly, surgeons and doctors for some things, but I think that a lot of it's just sticky plaster. And if we let a plant into our body for 3 weeks, particularly through doing an essence protocol, the plant is working holistically. And once it's done its job, it's finished on all levels. So whatever the trauma is that originally caused the illness or whatever the suffering is we're dealing with, if we let the plant in long enough, it will heal all of it in a way that Western medicine can't. It's completely holistic in that sense. And again, that took me a number of years to really see and understand and feel that. But I kind of had a strange thought a few years ago about how many different plants I put into my body. And I thought, wow, how much medicine is that? And it was a lot, enough to fill a small room. And, that's the journey. It's, if we just trust the plants, then anything can be healed. I've had some really deep and profound experiences for myself for healing, and I've seen that other people also go through similar journeys and processes, and it's led me to a place to believe that anything can be healed, certainly on a soul level. Some things happen in our physical body. Maybe we lose some parts of our limbs, or things get a little bit broken. I have some knee issues and stuff, and maybe some of them, once they're a little bit broken, they're a bit hard to fix, but on an energetic level, we can really we can let go of the traumas attached to those wounds.
Yes, indeed. I am super excited about talking to you about a subject that we might be kind of going into overtime about. So once upon a time, and I think this was an article I read online, but I also kind of imagined that it was in a journal like Shaman's Drum or something like that. But there was this article about in your area, like Wales and Ireland and stuff like that, they would notice during magic mushroom season that the livestock would be eating, like the sheep and stuff would be eating the mushrooms, and the sheep would wander into the road in the middle of the night and check out the headlights, kind of just like, whoa, this is interesting, like, because they were high. Does this actually happen? Have you heard of this?
That might be a little bit of an urban myth, but I've observed sheep. There are probably 100 sheep for every human where we live in Wales, man. So there's a lot of sheep, right? And the sheep, on the one hand, for the fungi lovers, the sheep are on the one hand the biggest nuisance going, but they're also an essential part of the process, because without the sheep, the spores don't really get spread. So the sheep eat the grass, and in amongst the grass, they eat the fungi. And I kind of think if you sit and spend time with sheep consciousness anyway, man, those guys are far out, they're just drifting around. They haven't got a clue what's going on. I mean, look at the way they handle situations. Like, oh, I'm going to follow that guy, man. It's like, so who knows what kind of world sheep permanently inhabit? I don't know. But maybe there might be some, trippy stories of Welsh sheep wandering in front of cars and seeing headlights. This is a land that is famous for its fungi and for its other world stuff. And, why not let the sheep into that game as well,
Yes. They're fun and very docile and kind of compassionate. Like sheep are compassionate, right?
Yeah, when was the last time you heard of anybody being charged by a herd of sheep and being trampled, right, by a sheep? Occasionally cows get aggressive, but I never heard of anyone, dying by a herd of sheep.
Right, and they're fluffy, and they're huggable, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Without them, the medicine doesn't spread. They eat them, they process with the grass, and then they go to the toilet, and that's how the spores get spread, and it goes into the earth, and that's how the mycelial network is created. So there's a whole symbiotic process going on there with the sacred fungi and with the sheep, and it's like everything. If it's not in balance, there's too many sheep, everything gets eaten, and so the fruit can't grow. And if there aren't any sheep, then they don't really spread. So there's, like everything in nature, there has to be that balance of enough. But the advent of pesticides and different stuff has meant that that medicine is not as abundant as it once was. I think this is just a general situation for all of these medicines the world over, whether it's the peyote down in Mexico and the oil companies, whether it's the oil companies taking the forest in the Amazon or over-exploitation. The same issue is happening to teacher plant medicines or entheogens everywhere in the world for a variety of different human created reasons. But yeah, crazy sheep, man, the Welsh sheep.
Tell me a little bit about the mushroom season there, and is it that Psilocybe semilanceata grows there, the Liberty caps? Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah, that grows in different places. Actually, grows pretty much all over Europe in different places where it can find a place to inhabit without being bothered too much. But yeah, it's season now. The moon is in the right place. I think the weather is super important to this process, and in Britain the weather is volatile anyway, and this season, this year particularly, seems to be pretty volatile. So if you have too much sun, you don't get the fruits. If you have too much rain, they get soggy, they don't grow properly. So there's again that fine balance of sunshine a little bit, but they need the water. If the ground's too hard, they don't grow. There are many factors that actually contribute to the season being a good one or a bad one. And yeah, the moon is probably one of the biggest factors. You're not going to find so many fungi on a new moon. The moon, kind of the full moon, is what pulls them out of the ground. And this was something we learnt in Italy, actually, from the local people there who would go up into the forest during porcini season, looking for all manner of beautiful, tasty, edible mushrooms. And sometimes me and Emma would go up into the forest during autumn looking for porcinis or black trumpet mushrooms, and we would go up, kind of thinking, okay, this seems, it's autumn, this is probably a good time to go. And the locals were like, nah, man, don't bother, you need to wait 2 days. I'm like, why? It's like, what's going to happen in 2 days? The moon is in the wrong place, wind is blowing from the wrong direction. We're like, okay, man, that sounds like some sort of local mumbo jumbo. So we would go up, come back with nothing. 2 days later, we'd see these local guys come back with massive bunches of like really beautiful, tasty, edible mushrooms. I'd be like, wow, where did you find? I said, we told you, man, you have to wait 2 days. The moon was in the wrong place and wasn't full enough and da-da-da. So I kind of learnt a lot from these local people about the nature of fungi growing anyway, and the factors that are at play. But yeah, sometimes, the season is just a couple of weeks long. It depends when full moon is. It depends what the weather conditions are like. It depends what the weather's been like that year. If you have no rain during the summer, you ain't going to have a great fungi season. But I guess it's probably the same in the US, right?
Definitely. Yeah. We're actually having, in the Pacific Northwest, we're having a really good fungi season. And in San Diego, the reishi mushrooms, Aganodermas, are popping on the trees, and we see some poria mushrooms. Basically shelf fungus that's growing on trees and dead wood. So I'll start rowing. I'm gonna go get a boat and row all the way over there, so I can be there on time for mushroom picking season.
Nice. Well, always, man. Next time you come over and it's the season, we'll go and show you, man, how it is in the hills. But I just pray that common sense comes to pass with humans in general in our relationship with the land, because The other terrible thing we see a lot is the overuse of hedge trimmers and lawnmowers. And, if we just let the plants grow a little bit, there is so much abundance of medicine plants that grow in the hedges that just we never get to see, because people want to have like an inch lawn, and for some reason the tree's bothering them, so they chop it down, and then all the plants are, it's crazy, man. There's so much medicine out there. If we just let nature do its thing for a little bit longer without the need to control it, whether it's the fungi, whether it's the hedgerow medicine, the forest medicine, it's like, this is why there are some species going extinct. They just don't have the opportunity to flourish anymore. And I really hold that as a strong prayer that humans in general start to appreciate this abundance of health and food and vitality that nature has to offer us if we just stop using the hedge trimmer, man.
Yeah, and it'd be nice if they did less leaf blowing in my neighborhood.
Right. Hey, just out of curiosity, I read a report somewhere that in some states in America, it's actually illegal to let your lawn grow over like an inch or something. Is that true, or is that?
That's true. Yeah.
Wow, and then you have lawn police that come around and check for the local council or something.
Yeah, they write you tickets. Fine.
Is that for real, or is that just some kind of urban myth? Like,
I believe it's true. I haven't been written one because I haven't had to own one of those properties in one of those communities, but I've heard people complain about it quite often.
Wow. Anyway, it kind of, I think, illustrates the insanity that blights our world at the moment, man. It's just like, okay, sure, man, cut the lawn.
Right.
Anyway, so, wow, yeah. It's been beautiful to talk to you, brother. Is there anything else you'd like to ask us about? Or I think we're probably out of time anyway, right?
Yes, absolutely. We are hoping to have you back on already and saying our salutations. Give our listeners an opportunity to find you online. Give us where to find you.
Okay, so we have a number of different places I recommend to check out. Check out plantconsciousness.com. We have a sort of informal newsletter that goes out every once in a while when we've got something interesting to announce. But you can find all of our information about the courses the training programs that we run. We also offer a remote healing service that we can do anywhere in the world, because it's, we do it remotely, working at a quantum level. And then we also have our flower essences. A lot of people from America actually buy our flower essences online. So that's plantconsciousness.com. Everything's on there. Sign up to the newsletter and you'll be kept informed of all the news. And check out our online TV platform, wisdomhub.tv. You can see pretty much most of the talks from Plant Consciousness and Shamanic Lands over the last few years. They're on there. Plus there's a whole bunch of really cool tutorials and workshops that we filmed with some of our teachers, talking about some of the things that we learned from them. And there's also a really beautiful new movie. It's called Root Republic, that a friend of ours, a German film producer called Oliver Kier, made, which we also happened to be in. He came to stay with us, but regardless of that, it's a great movie anyway, and highly recommend checking out that. Some of the footage is for free, and some of it there's a minimal $7 a month kind of Netflix subscription just to help pay for the whole process. Making films is not cheap, and we have a commitment to keep producing content, and Wisdom Hub is really a community-based service. Everyone puts in a little contribution. That contribution helps us pay the teachers for their time, helps pay the camera crew, and helps keep the website afloat. So it's really a beautiful online TV service that we're hoping to grow and work with many other people. And so if you have any aspiring film producers out there or people producing content, please do get in touch with us through wisdomhub.tv. We're always interested to speak to people making content about shamanism and about the earth and about plants. That's really what the focus of Wisdom Hub is all about.
I'm on that site for the first time. That's beautiful. This is wonderful. I'm really grateful that you're producing this.
Yeah, thank you. So I recommend all of I invite all of your audience to check that out and see if there's anything there that resonates with them. But thank you very much for the opportunity, brother, to talk to you and to your audience. And I hope maybe get my beautiful wife to come and chat to you. She's got many interesting stories too, and she's really the smart one in the operation anyway. So, so I'm sure she'd love to do that at some point too. And if you have people in the audience who want to get in contact with us, they can reach us on Facebook. We like to have communications with plant people all over the world. Many different doorways can open that way for all of us, and connections can be made, and plant wisdom can be shared, and all of these things. We are a global community of plant and fungal people, man, and it's through the sharing, through the mycelial networks that the web as we call it, the web of weird twangs, and people get connected. So please, if you're listening, do feel free to find me on Facebook or chat to us through the Plant Consciousness or Shamanic Lands groups. We're always open to chat back.
Well, I want to give a shout out to your apothecary because it feels really thorough. And if you're a listener and you heard us talk about mugwort or Artemisia absinthium, wormwood, he's got all of these in his apothecary. plantconsciousness.com/apothecary, or click the link on his page, on the main page there. You've got some really great stuff here. Oak essence. There's you in here. Tell us about it for a minute.
Okay, so the essences, really, the journey started with Mugwort. She instructed us to make the first essence many years ago, and for a while we just had the 2 Mugwort essences. That was all we felt we wanted to do. And then through the process of learning with Pam and Carol, I got to learn how to make essences at another level, and then new plants started coming. And these are just the ones that we know. These are our master allies that we've worked with and dieted with, and we know the intelligence of, and had permissions from to make medicines with. And so these are the ones that are sort of commercially available for people to access those medicines. But I have a whole cupboard of many other medicines that I have to sit and diet with, and I have many years of work in front of me, man, with all kinds of crazy plants. But essentially, to cut to the chase, a flower essence is quantum medicine. We are working at a quantum level with the conscious intelligence of the plant. With its permission, we follow all of the indigenous protocols making our medicines. And so the spirit of the medicine is fully present with its full permission in those medicines. And they're selling really well because they are what they are, man, and people feel their energy and their strength. And they're a beautiful gift to us, the flower essences, that comes out of Edward Batch's work. But we kind of feel that the ancestors also knew this, and that water holds vibration, and so to hold a plant consciousness within that water makes perfect sense. And it's a really beautiful, it can be subtle, but it can also be really strong. I've seen people have really strong experiences with flower essences. People are like, hey man, what's a mugwort essence going to do? I've done ayahuasca 100 times. Like, okay, man, just take the essence and see. If your wife leaves you and your job fires you and your life goes to shit over the next 2 weeks, don't blame me, man. It's mugwort realigning your life for you. She's just showing you all of those things in your life that are not in alignment. That is really what mugwort does, And each one of these essences has its core energies that it can share with us. And we can sometimes use them more than one at once. But if you want to get to know a plant, a flower essence 3-week protocol is a really good place to start, and an essential part of the plant spirit work also. So a little bit about flower essences.
Yes, you've inspired me. I want to order that and work with the U medicine and the mugwort, and there's just so many levels for mugwort for me. And then you've re-inspired me to get more into relationship with nettle. I'm very excited about the nettle. Yeah,
beautiful plants. And just to say, actually, the U Mysteries, Michael actually lives up. He's originally from Scotland, but he lives up in Massachusetts, I think in Western Massachusetts. And he runs the U Mysteries in Seattle. He has quite a good, strong group that he's been working with. So if any of you out there, like Hugh, feel called to the U Tree, our teacher, he's actually based in America. In fact, Pam is also based up in Vermont. So if there are people stateside wanting to learn about plant spirit healing, please Google Pam Montgomery and plant spirit healing. She has her own Sweetwater sanctuary up in Vermont where you can go and do plant diets and learn all the wonderful things that we learned from her. She's really the most beautiful earth mother. And she's one of my favorite people on the whole planet, and I owe her a huge debt of gratitude for all the things that she's taught me over the years. So I highly recommend people stateside to check out her work as well.
So when people find you on social media, spell your name for them.
So it's spelt the Welsh way. It's Davyd, Davyd, and then Farrell is the same as Colin Farrell, in Hollywood, Farrell. He's a bit better looking than me, but
not by much, right?
Thank you. Davyd Ferrell, check us out, and you can find my wife Emma Farrell, or you can hit us up through the Plant Consciousness page on Facebook or Instagram. Emma has a really beautiful Instagram page she runs for Plant Consciousness, and all of those ways you can connect to us there, and we're always happy to connect people and chit chat. And as I guess you realise, I like to talk about plants, right? So it's really always a pleasure for me.
Thank you so much. Davyd or David? Which one?
You know what? Either is fine. Everywhere I go, people in Italy, Davide. In Ireland, they call me Dahi. In Wales, they call me David. In England, they call me David. So, you know what? It's same, but different, right?
Same, but different, right? Yeah, like Trevor, Trevar.
Exactly. You know, I'm not so attached to any of them. They're all me, just different parts of me. So it's all good. You know, I like that.
Well, I'm in America, so David, thank you very much.
Bless you. Thank you, brother. Thank you to all of your listeners out there. Hopefully, in some small way, inspired them to go out and look at nettle and mugwort and other things in a slightly different way. And the journey with the plants is a beautiful journey. And yeah, it's a very unique and personal one that is just you and your journey with them. And it will be what it is, but it's always beautiful. So thank you very much.
So for our listeners, this is Captain Hugh T Alkemi signing out. You're listening to Entheoradio, Entheo Media Productions. You can find us on most podcast services, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're really popular on iHeartRadio lately. You can find us on Spreaker. You can find us on YouTube and a bunch of other places, Castbox FM, Entheoradio.com. Some of the older episodes are available through Blog Talk Radio. I'm working to update that so everything is reflective of episodes like you heard today. And I'm very, very excited. Just remember, it's you and the medicine and you too, right?
It's always about you somehow.
you and the you.
Always.
All right. Take care now.